InStride is a public benefit corporation that helps companies and their employees engage in lifelong learning, so important, and upskilling. And we have Mary Zappone. Mary is the CEO of Brace Industrial Group and has been CEO of multiple companies. And she lives the upskilling situation throughout all the companies that she is running and has run in the past. I'm Lorraine Siegel. I'm the founder, chair, and CEO of the Exceptional Women Awardees Foundation. We enable high-level, high-potential women to rise in their careers and reach their dreams. Why did we start this foundation? Well, when I was a young lawyer and then an entrepreneur and then a CEO of a number of different companies, and even as a board director, I never had a mentor. I never had a coach. And so I wanted to start a foundation that would enable women like myself who walk the road less traveled to have a sisterhood of support and advice to enable them to rise for the rest of their life. And that is exactly what we do. We make successful people even more successful. And so we're going to speak to two very successful people today. Let's start right away with Michelle from InStride. Michelle, tell us about InStride. What do you do there?
Thanks, Lorraine. At InStride, we are enabling the world's leading corporations and also visionary CEOs to solve their business challenges. We provide life-changing and career-boosting opportunities. And at InStride, we're designing end-to-end upskilling, learning pathways, and we partner with some of the highest quality institutions around the world who are committed to outcomes and research and access and true excellence in order to impact corporations who will also realize financial returns for their enterprises.
Well, that's terrific, Michelle, and lots more to talk about that. But Mary, I want to go to you because at Brace, you are, and at other companies you run, you're actually doing that on the job. Tell us how you have upskilled employees or how you believe that should be done from the CEO's point of view.
Sure, it's great to be here with everybody on International Women's Day. And Brace Industrial Group does scaffolding, insulation, and coatings and paintings for industrial businesses such as power and refining and petrochem. And just an example of how we do upskilling at this company and others is to make sure that we provide some online training that people can take on their own time. And one of the ones we use now is something called Red Vector. And in a different role, we used a different one called Skillsoft. And again, some people could take some training during the day at work, and others they could take beyond, outside of work hours and take some extra classes just to learn even more.
And I remember how hard it was working all day and then going to school at night. It really is difficult. And having an employer that supports that kind of endeavor is so important. And so, Michelle, when you think about people who are in jobs where they don't have degrees, and I think, Mary, you have some thoughts on this too. How do you get that rolling, that lifelong learning idea rolling?
So, Lorraine, when we think about lifelong learning, it's really about thinking about our careers differently. In the past, it was you would have all of your education before you ever got your first job. And today, we recognize that education can be sought all throughout our careers. So the days that we go and complete our education and then start our first job have really changed. So we're starting to think about ways that we can not only refine our skills, but stay relevant. And Mary and I have had these conversations before thinking, if you're balancing work and you're balancing skills, how do you actually do that? And it's a supportive employer that can really help you to not only achieve skills, but potentially move towards transformative degrees in the future as well.
So, Mary, when you think about the employees that you have at an industrial company, and you've run a lot of manufacturing companies before, many of whom don't have degrees, how do you introduce this concept to them? And is this something that other organizations are thinking of? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think that many of my employees don't have degrees, but I would say they do have a very strong learning orientation where they do want to keep learning. So they're learning what we call craft skills, or they're real experts in insulation and scaffolding, for example. But also they want to learn how to be project managers and how to get along better with a team, how to work well as a team or be a foreman or supervisor. And a lot of those things are on the job, but some of them are online training and some of them are things people do, outside of the office. So I think the employer has some responsibility to offer, training and mentoring. And then I think the employee has responsibility to always keep that learning orientation and keep options open to learn more things.
When you think about the global workforce and remote work and so many jobs, not maybe manufacturing all the time, but certainly parts of it can be done remotely. Is this a way to retain good people and attract good people?
Absolutely, Lorraine. And one of the things that we've recognized with our particular partnerships is that it creates that competitive advantage for corporations to say that if we have this benefit of education, truly people want to stay, not only for the length and duration of their entire program, but know that they want to apply to the jobs that have this benefit. We've seen this in our iconic partnerships with Starbucks and Arizona State University, who have actually not only increased the length of tenure for their baristas, but people actually applying for that job as a result of the benefit. So we've seen tremendous impacts for corporations by doing this, both on the retention side as well as the recruitment side.
Michelle, just a follow-up question. I love the fact that Starbucks offered baristas health insurance. And now you say they're also offering them education opportunity. Just give us a few beats on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we believe that education should be as universal as healthcare in the future. So it's an important thing to think about in that way, that how healthcare truly impacts the individual and there's social impact as a result of that. Education benefits should be largely the same as healthcare.
I wanted to ask you how you influence other C-suite leaders like yourself to think in the way that Michelle has mentioned, that this is a lifelong commitment, because many people think in short term. What's your thought on that, to how to motivate other C-suite leaders?
And I think a lot of C-suite leaders are interested in ensuring their people are continuing to grow. And one of the areas that actually was used for me early in my career was taking on special projects while you were doing your base job. And that helps bring some creativity to different projects. And you can do that. I've had many people do that. I had one person who was my general counsel who learned M&A and later got an MBA. And had another person that was VP of sales who took on his own, learning how to set up video conferencing and learned Excel many years before we were all on Zoom calls.
So Mary, you've talked about digital skills, and in the manufacturing area, I would imagine there's a lot of upskilling that would need to take place for folks to become not necessarily digital natives, but certainly digital proficients. What are your thoughts on that, and how do we make that happen?
Well, I think what I've noticed is if you look at the different frontline roles, because different jobs I've had, people were delivery technicians, answering calls about automotive aftermarket, or here doing construction. And before, a lot of those jobs would not require significant digital skills. And now they all do, either very sophisticated mobile devices, setting up sophisticated medical equipment. And then here, just even our training is kept in a very sophisticated training system. So people have to understand how to interact with those systems and use QR codes and things like that. So again, some they learn in the office, and some they learn in the field, and some they pick up more on their own. And those that spend more time picking up and those skills, are able to progress further.
Yeah, it's absolutely essential. So that gives us a great lead in, Mary. Thank you for that. Let's talk about the jobs of the future. And Michelle, you are obviously in proactive mode, looking at what jobs for the future would be. Give us some ideas on what your research has showed.
Yeah, so we've seen that more than 50% of Americans actually don't believe that a good job is within their reach or that they can advance their career. So that's really startling. And when we think about the jobs of the future, there are a few things that people tend to think about. Number one is, to Mary's point, is do I have the digital skills to be able to advance in my career? So we're seeing that, more and more often that people want technology and digital skills. The other thing that we're really seeing across the entire spectrum is that leadership skills are kind of an important part of your progress. So how do you think like an individual and achieve the highest level of competency in what you do as an individual contributor? But then what does that look like when you're thinking about a small team? And then what does that look like when you're leading a larger team or a division? And then what does that look like at the executive level where you're really thinking about the business strategically? And so that kind of progression for a leader goes from critical thinking to financial acumen and so forth, and strategy. So these are the things that we're thinking about in jobs of the future.
Amazing. That would be a most well-rounded executive if you had somebody who had all of that. So Mary, to go for a moment to your journey, and Michelle, I'm going to come back to you on yours too. Mary, you have taken a role and a number of roles in a very male-dominated environment. So being in manufacturing, there's not that often that you find women CEOs leading manufacturing companies. It's increasing, but it's not that common. What was your journey? How did you get into the area that you're in now?
So I started, I guess, getting a degree in chemical engineering certainly headed me down that path. And then I did get an MBA in finance and started at Exxon. And Exxon was a really great training ground. They're very good at, controls process and risk management. So I actually switched from finance into operations, and that was a lateral move. And that is sometimes can be a good way to learn new skills, and that can be an upskilling as well. I then did work for multiple other, Fortune 50 very large companies, including Alcoa and Tyco and GE, and then was brought into private equity through a former boss of mine and became a CEO of a private equity portfolio company. And that was in medical devices and really logistics. And then I worked in one in automotive aftermarket, and then today in industrial services.
It's so inspiring, Mary, because you have literally been in areas where other women have feared to tread in many respects. So congratulations on that. You have an amazing career, and we're so happy to have you as part of our Exceptional Women Awardees. So Michelle, you took a different route. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to be the Chief University Officer at InStride.
Well, thanks for asking, Lorraine. In fact, I've spent 20 years in higher education thinking about different ways that partnerships can grow and institutions can grow their student bases, and really taking a strong look at what is important to an institution or a university. And in the last few years, thinking about how that actually expands to the corporate sector and what's necessary for these partnerships. And the last year being a part of EWA has really, truly accelerated my career in many ways. My education supports what I do. My experience supports what I do, but bringing that together with incredible support, with mentors and understanding the mentorship process, but also working alongside incredibly supportive women and men who not only apprentice me, but give me ideas for the future and really support the ability to test and try new things. The CEO pop-ups that we have really helped support me to grow in my career, particularly in the last year. And so I started InStride as a vice president. and quickly advanced to the role of senior vice president and then chief university officer in a very short amount of time, because I was able to have the right support system around me, but also you prove my ability and worth in the job. So it's been an incredible ride, and one that I feel incredibly grateful for.
And we're incredibly proud of you, I must say. And also your mentor, Amy Towner, who was on our Women in Health show just a week or so ago, has been a tremendous support and inspiration for you too. And that's exactly what it's all about. So Mary, since I'm your mentor, we won't talk about me, but let's see if we have a few questions that have come in, because our producer says there's one or two that are standing there waiting for us. And here we are, Joan of Milwaukee. Well, this is a slightly different take on the question I asked you, Michelle, which is, if somebody's in college and doesn't have a job, can they get a company to support their education? It's sort of a backwards way of asking it, but Joan, it's a good question. Thank you. Michelle, what do you think?
Well, Joan, I absolutely think that it's possible for people who are in college to get companies to pay for their education. In fact, Amy and I were having this conversation just recently, and the biggest question is, what do you really want to do with that education? And once you can unpack your objective and where you want to go, you can actually pinpoint the organization that will help support that. So there's three things that you can do. Number one, check out Glassdoor, who has tons of information about future and prospective employers. The second thing that you can do is ask your mentor or friend, where did you go? What advice do you have? And the third thing that you can do is actually ask a prospective employer. Do you have a tuition program, tuition reimbursement, or a strategic tuition program to help me with my education? That not only signals to an employer that you have this interest and mindset in education, but it can give you some really next steps in terms of what to do.
Oh, that's great. Wow. I wish I had somebody I could have asked when I was at that stage in my career. I know there are other questions, so let's see a few more. They're really wonderful. Thanks, Joan, for that. Carl from Fort Lauderdale. Oh, he wants to know, Mary, as a CEO, what have you done to help your employees, not just at your particular company that you're at, but the other companies? What are their personal responsibilities compared to or supported by the company responsibilities? And how do you think they should take accountability for their education while working for the company?
Yeah, I definitely think it's on both sides. So I think that the companies, we want to make sure that people are growing and learning, but I think the employee also needs to, put in that time and effort. And again, like I think, I worked at 3M earlier in my career, and now some other companies have copied it, where you have like 20% time to do special projects. You can't do that in every company, but you can very often volunteer to participate in maybe a cross-functional team, or take on something that is, difficult, that hasn't been resolved, and take on a problem and bring together a group of people to get a recommendation to bring and get that resolved. So I do think it is that both the employee and the employer have a dual responsibility.
So, Mary, I've heard this many times. A lot of our EWAs say that one of their reasons for success is that they put their hand up for the hard jobs. Did you do that?
I most definitely did. I most definitely did take on, challenging projects and then challenging roles. And that has definitely helped me grow and learn dramatically. And then I think able to give back to the companies and the employees as well.
And that's where you have to overcome your own fear of the imposter syndrome, or feeling that you're not good enough. And clearly you have to let that voice just go away and continue to proceed on your way. So we have another few questions coming up, and I love to include our audience. So thank you all so much for this. Oh, Naomi, this is a great question from Salt Lake City. There are a lot of unemployed women due to COVID. Do you have any solutions for that? I'm going to ask both of you this. So let's go to Michelle, and then Mary, be thinking of it, because I'm going to come to you too. Michelle, what do you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's a tragedy what's happened across this pandemic to so many women that are trying to balance childcare and their jobs. So certainly unemployment has been an issue. I think that there's a few things that we can do. Number one is supporting each other to be able to attain that next role. And the second thing that we can do is really thinking about, what do we need to do to achieve that that next job? Are there ways in which employers can help? Are there ways in which we can fill in skills with online courses that can help us achieve more? So I think that a combination of looking around and having the support around you is what we should be doing. But we all need to lean into our female sisters who are definitely disproportionately impacted by this pandemic.
Yeah, and the bifurcation between home and work has changed completely. They are so integrated now that I have heard of some companies who are actually providing money for childcare, providing money for tutoring. So I think that we're blurring the lines between work and home, and also mental health issues have become so much more significant because of COVID. So I think there's some really good things that have come out of this. Mary, what are your thoughts as an employer, as Michelle is, but as an employer in a business where there probably aren't that many women? How do we get these unemployed women who were employed back to work?
Yeah, for us, it's been very difficult I'll say in this case for our men and our women, because we're serve essential services. So they are out, building scaffolds and doing frontline work. And yet many of them are also trying to educate children at home, whether that's the mom or the dad or both. And so we do have, it's just been extraordinarily difficult year for the team, for sure. We do have some roles that are more easily done from home. So if you're in, maybe HR or some of the billing roles, some of that and payroll can be done from home, and that allows people to have a little bit more flexibility. However, still extraordinarily difficult while they're, trying to raise kids and take care of the kids and get their schooling done. So I just think it's a very difficult time. We get flexibility where we can, but obviously a lot of the jobs are required to be on site with a customer.
Yeah, and that has been the case in many manufacturing industries. There's another question, and thank you all to the audience for bringing in these questions. They are really thoughtful and wonderful, and I appreciate them. This is Michael in San Jose. Oh, Mary, this is fun for you. As a board member, how far into this can you get if now you have to take your management hat off and put on your board hat, because I know you sit on the board of a number of companies. How far can you get into these issues if you're a board member and not interfere with the way of management or management decisions?
Yes, so as a board member, it's really important to be supportive of the management team and the CEO. And, definitely during COVID, I think, both my board was helpful to me talking through the difficulties, and I think I was helpful where I'm on the board to just talk through what everybody's facing. But some things that, on the public board I'm on is I actually have a mentoring relationship with one of the senior VPs in the company, and that's all, designed with the CEO. So there's things that you can do to support individual people, and then just always be supportive of understanding, maybe sharing what you're seeing in your company, and are there any, lessons learned, between the two companies as well.
Right, absolutely. So, Michelle, do you have some examples of the company university partnership that you could share with us? I know you told us about Starbucks in Arizona, but any others that you can share?
Yeah, absolutely. So our academic partner network includes City University of New York and University of Wisconsin-Madison as well as a number of partners that introduce language learning and high school completion. And we recognize that certifications are also quite necessary across the board. One of the things that we're doing with a corporation called LabCorp that you might know is bringing STEM education from all of these institutions actually to their employee base. It's actually important for them to think about that as a long-term strategy and recognizing that STEM education is something they want to support. Another leading corporation, the Banfield Corporation, is actually thinking about creating true pathways for enabling veterinary medicine and veterinary science to expand. So that's also an incredibly forward-leaning program that we're really excited about, that really takes universities and these corporations together to think about what are the challenges that they face and how they can create some impact in their business as well.
Oh, that's great. Mary, I want to go back to something that you said, and we only have 2 minutes left, but it rang a bell with me, and I want to explore it just for another minute or two. You had an engineering degree, and then you entered an MBA in finance. Why did you feel that you needed to have both?
Well, I definitely enjoyed my engineering side, but I did want to get on the business side of things. So I had worked in a lab at 3M for a couple of summers and did a lot of work there. They had very good connection with the labs and with the customers. So I got to meet some of their marketing people and learned a little bit more about complaints and follow-ups and the costs of errors, and really learned about that. And then initially was studying marketing and finance, and then switched into finance, and it definitely has helped me to understand the engineering side and be able to handle technology, but then really understand the broader business side of things.
Well, you have a remarkable background, Mary. And Michelle, you do too. I mean, you transitioned from academia into the business world. That's not that easy. What do you think was the key that held your success in that transition?
Oh, it's a great question. And I think it's about translating the languages. One of the things that we find time and time again is that the language of academia tends to be so very different than the language of industry or enterprise. Being able to straddle those two ecosystems, if you will, has been sort of the success that I've seen, is being able to really listen to what's happening on the academic side and really understand what corporations are looking for. The thread that connects those things is the intention to learn, the intention to create more affordable and more accessible opportunities. So at a mission perspective, they're very much aligned, but how we bring those two things together from a language translation perspective is truly what I've been working on in the last couple of years.
Well, you certainly have succeeded. And when I look at both your and Mary's background, it's quite clear to me that having a diversity of background, a diversity of education, diversity of thought, and a diversity of experience is extremely important nowadays. And bringing those different cultures together, as you have, is an amazing expertise. And I have no doubt, Michelle, there will be some board positions for you in the future, and Mary, for you, even more than you're doing now. So I am so grateful to both of you for the time and your expertise. I know that our audience has learned a lot, and hopefully we will be able to have you back. I know there's a very pertinent article that came out from IBM today talking about the pipeline of women in the workforce has dropped significantly. And so with the expertise from Michelle and also Mary, hopefully we can help companies come to the realization that that needs to be fixed, and we'll be part of it. So thank you all so much. We have an amazing new show coming up for you. The next one is going to be Joanne Lublin. Joanne is a former Wall Street Journal reporter. I am sure you have read many of her articles. She was at the Wall Street Journal for many decades, and I've read almost everything that she's written. She's really terrific. And now she has undertaken a whole new journey. She has written a book called Power Moms, and in it she has featured one of our exceptional women awardees. Her name is Janelle Beeler. And Janelle, when she entered our EWA, she was not even a vice president. And now she is the president of Adecco Canada. And a lot of that had to do with her mentor, who is Linda LeRae, who is also the vice chairman of EWA, the former CEO of Fredericks of Hollywood and Giorgio Beverly Hills before that. And also Linda is CEO of Enjoy Global. So these amazing women will be on with us. I hope you join us. And I leave you with one challenge, which I hope that you will give us some information on. The challenge is, how have you upskilled yourself during this last year of COVID? My email is up on the screen. I hope that you email me. Thanks so much for participating. Sorry to those whose questions we didn't get to. We'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.